Boom.
Hello, Travis.
Hello, Michael. How are you?
I'm good. Welcome to everybody to the Couch Funeral Podcast.
Where all of your dreams come true.
That's right. That's exactly right. So,
what calamities have just struck the Washington Monument? What were you just telling me?
I just saw a video of lightning striking the Washington Monument. Now, if only Donald Trump had been pinned to the top of it, it would be a perfect day for me.
Didn't it already strike? I thought it doesn't strike twice.
I don't know.
Didn't it strike down on January 6th?
Yes, something like that. So, a lot of stuff going on this week.
Is that because of climate change or what?
I don't think so. The lightning strike, because it's a big, giant phallic symbol in the middle of Washington. Lightning is drawn to it. So much shit going on, right?
No doubt about it. Never a dull moment.
Well, this is your chance to, go ahead and, give me a little rip on the Biden administration. So I'll give you a shot.
Well, I was thinking about that because in the last couple of days, there's a whole host of things we can talk about, but I think the big news story is Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And I
want to hear what you think about it.
Well, it's sad just watching the whole thing unfold. But let me just get right to the politics of it, then we'll circle back.
Okay.
Jen
Circle back,
Psaki.
Jen.
Jen Psaki, our way back to the
She
details.
come on like a sake. Well, all right, go ahead.
How long is she going to last in that job?
I don't know. Could be, I'm going to say she's going to get through the first year for sure. Typically, press secretaries don't stay the whole time. But
that's a hard job.
It's a hard job.
Do you think that if Biden keels over and co-president Harris takes over, she'll keep Jen Psaki?
I don't know. I would actually vote for Jen Psaki for president.
Vote for her for president?
Yeah.
Does she have an original thought, or is she just a good spin doctor?
It appears she does. She does a lot of. How do I put this? Should we call it social media, or she does a lot of external videos and Q&A stuff that you see on social media or Instagram or whatever. And I'm going to guess you could probably see it if you were looking on Twitter. So, where she is not reading the talking points, right? And some of it's ad lib and some of it's planned, and always seems pretty good to me. So,
and I think a lot of the press secretaries are pretty good at their job. Think about it. They know who their boss is. They know who they're the spokesperson for, what their party lines are, what they're supposed to say. Like even Strokeface, our favorite. You hated her, but I thought she was good at what she did.
Really?
You didn't? You didn't because
if being a disciple from hell is what you're talking about.
And that's why, because of who her boss was and who she was carrying the message for. But if you think about it, she got a lot of tough questions, a lot of mud, that was flung at her, and she did good not only dodging it, but trying to answer the question that she wished she was asked and not the question she was asked. Of course, we're talking about Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
Yes.
Not to be confused with the other stroke face that we're referring to.
Who's the other one?
I don't know.
Well, it pretty much destroyed Sean Spicer. So, they're both, him and Huckabee Sanders are both, I don't know what the word is, floating around in the bogs of far-right news.
I don't know. All of the former press secretaries seem a lot happier now in their lives outside of the White House.
Well, I think all of them were happier once they were out of that what do you call it? That churn, that grinder of a situation. Always having the front. Always having to put some kind of good spin on a bunch of lies and crap.
That's what it is.
Right?
They all do it. They all have to put the spin on lies and try to figure it out.
They do. But when you were working for that administration, it was particularly. I think it looked to me like it was particularly tedious, right? Because it was every single day. The very first press conference they had was where Sean Spicer had to defend the lie about the size of the inauguration crowd. It's just so fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, that was probably a good sign of things to come. Like why we needed to defend that position, that the size of the inauguration crowd was or wasn't anything. Like, who cares?
Just and then it was shortly after that what's her face? Conway. Remember her?
Kellyanne Conway.
Kellyanne Conway coined the term alternative facts.
No, I think it was before her. Wasn't it?
I think it came out of her mouth in regards to that photo.
Yeah, but it may have come out of her mouth, but I don't know if she made it up. But you know what was interesting about her isn't her husband on your team? He's like a staunch card-carrying Democrat.
He is.
Did it inspire images of Arnold Schwarzenegger and Maria Shriver in their political?
The only image I get when I think of Arnold Schwarzenegger is him fucking the maid.
Yeah.
Which is disgusting considering.
You actually pictured that image?
Well, there were pictures of it, so,
not of the actual sex.
Oh, yeah. No, of the maid.
Oh, yeah.
So, anyway, all disgusting. And, of course, when your wife looks like Skeletor, I don't know.
Who's the Skeletor?
Maria Shriver. Take a good look at her. Yeah,
she was once an attractive woman, no?
Skeletor called. He wants his face back. So,
yeah, but look at him. He's not the picture of beauty.
Nope. No pretty package there. So, speaking of Schwarzenegger and recalls, so that's about to happen, right? So they say it's close with
Newsom.
With Newsom and just the recall, right? So right now it's yes or no on the recall.
Should he be recalled?
Right? And if it's no, then that's the end of it. If it's yes, then there are 50 candidates.
That's ridiculous.
On the ballot. You have to choose from 50 candidates. One of them is Larry Elder, who is a long-time second-rate talk radio host.
Conservative, right?
Yeah, and full of shit, 6 Ways from Sunday. And Cox, just let the name speak for itself.
He's Orange.
He's the Republican.
Is he Orange County or San Diego guy? I forget.
That's a good question, but he's back. Finally, he's the guy. And isn't he the one that used the bear in his advertising?
He is, yeah. And I think he was the primary challenger to Newsom in the general election, yeah. And then isn't Faulkner? He's the San Diego guy, right? Faulkner is the San Diego mayor.
Yeah, but I think he's got some baggage. But I don't think anybody in the rest of California gives a shit about Faulkner. And I doubt Elder has name recognition with more than 10% of the electorate. That would be my guess, maybe. I don't know. This is a pretty blue state, so there's no huge following for a conservative talk radio show host or a Republican gubernatorial candidate. I mean, neither of those guys have much traction. Plus, it's all going to be diluted by the other 50.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Candidates. For those listening not in California or don't understand, in order for this recall to happen, there was several months of petitioning that the Secretary of State of California had to validate enough signatures came in to support the demand for the recall. And it's 1.5 million legitimate signatures, which doesn't seem like a lot in a state of, 50 million?
It's not. It was the occupancy of the Costco I go to yesterday.
Right. But if it takes 1.5 million signatures to get the process of the recall started, shouldn't the other 50 candidates have to show some type of support to get their names on the ballot?
Yeah, I don't know.
Like the number 50th guy or girl or combination of the two, whatever he or she may be.
That's a good question, and I think, and I don't know I don't really have an answer for that. I think the answer is no. I think once there's an actual election happening,
what do you think? Because could this be borderline, making people not be able to vote? Is this
voter suppression?
Voter suppression. Thank you.
Well, I mean, it's hard for me to whip up a lot of passion. If one of these Republican conservative candidates ends up winning and displacing what's his face? I can never remember his name. Newsom.
Yeah.
I mean, on my own personal situation in life, I mean, that would be a pleasure, right? He's not a plus for the business that I'm in. So
he's not a plus for any business, right, unless your business
for any
is,
business. That's right.
Free.
Yeah. So
free everything.
I guess this is worth taking just a second for me to just kind of re-outline something. I am, fully, a Democrat supporter, but in this state with this giant, Democratic majority, and no check and balance and no really functioning Republican Party in this state that can make any difference, I don't have a huge issue if the governor is Republican. It won't. He won't be the king of California, right? He won't even be a legislator. So he'll have influence on what what legislation comes forward, but it's still the Willie Brown party, right?
So is that really even a victory for California? Because the governor has veto power over certain bills, but if there's a supermajority in the state houses, then what's the point?
Yeah, governors don't tend to use their veto power if they're sure they're going to be overrode. No governor likes to have a veto overridden. So it would be very surprising that there would be vetoes on many vetoes that he wasn't sure wouldn't be overridden. So
let me ask you a question. I don't think I've ever asked you before or framed it this way. You have been a long time card carrying Democrat, but now fast forward to 2021, whatever we're up to now, and the current state of affairs with politics in this country. Is your primary reason for being a Democrat to prevent any Republican from winning office? Or I guess my real question is, why not be an independent?
Well, that's I think that's a valuable question. Why not be an independent? Because typically the platform of the Democratic Party typically represents everything that I'm in line. It's pretty much in line with how I see things. I don't
still though, after the evolution and all this time from whenever you first identified as a Democrat to now, even the left of left supermajority California, is that still your idea of the quintessential Democrat?
I don't think. Yeah, California's not a great representation of that. Although, I mean, I live here and I'm a Democrat in California. So yeah, and I'm a California supporter. I mean, unlike a lot of my friends and people in this state, I don't spend a lot of time shit talking California because I just think it's the best place in the country to live, and you can take all the arguments on the other side of that and just save them because they're not going to do any good giving them to me. If you don't live here, then fuck off, and if you do live here and you don't like it, get out, and then I can have less traffic on the California freeway. Maybe
you just aren't welcomed anywhere else. You have to.
Oh
be
no,
here.
Nobody would want me in any other state. There's no other state that would take me. Well, Las Vegas would take me, but look at who else they take. So, no offense to the relatives in Las Vegas. Sorry, Chris.
And the Hawaiians, right? Isn't Vegas considered the ninth island?
It is. It is. That's very good. And yeah. So yeah, I think that for purposes of that, the politics have been so important in my mind for the last few years that I think for me, and this is no offense to you, I don't want to take a wishy-washy. I'm an independent, or I'm really I'm a conservative, but I'm embarrassed to identify as a Republican. I don't understand that. I understand why anybody that
those are the rhinos, right?
Yeah, and I understand why anybody that. I understand why people would be embarrassed to be a Republican after the horse shit we've seen over the last 5-6 years. So, yeah, I'm a Democrat, and I'm still happy to identify that way. And if I need to change someday, I will. But so if in your mind you're thinking that the far left leanings of the Democratic Party, they don't really ruffle my feathers that much, right? I mean,
you always say that, but not yet. I think give it time.
Well, I mean, I always am going to probably be more in favor of a centrist view than the fringe of politics, but I think it takes the existence of the fringe to move things in a relatively expeditious manner towards some things that are going to be better.
And when you say move things, do you mean locally, nationally?
All of that, right? I mean, California is already, we already have the capability to achieve any fringe democratic ideal that we want to. The will and the political power is here. Yet I do see things I don't like in California on the political front, but as of yet, it's not a lot of fringe stuff. I mean, to be honest with you, the big fringe part of the party right now is in Washington, and we all know who they are. And I think they're playing the part that they're supposed to play in the Democratic Party. The Democrats have always claimed to be a big tent party, and and be open to different points.
It wasn't
of view,
Trump,
right?
Or he always he was pitching a tent. That's
you had to be, pitching a tent in the van with Billy Bush,
right?
And so I mean, and I've been thinking about this a little bit recently. Since Newt Gingrich entered the party,
that's always the moment for you that you cite,
because it's the moment. It's when things went awry for Republicans. Then since that moment, you have to, what's the right word? You have to take the oath. You have to drink the Kool-Aid. You can't be in the Republican Party and have any disagreement with their leader, right, through the whole process. So that was something that was started by Newt Gingrich and that whole group, and you had to take the vows. And who's the guy? I'm not going to think of his name. The guy that had the tax pledge that all the Republicans had to sign on to for several years, and just that whole group, right? And most of those guys are gone now, replaced by whatever this far right wing of the Republican Party is now, the insurrectionist party or whatever you want to call it. So I think that, it does start with that. So I think that as we look back and try to see what's happened, what has caused the crippling gridlock in politics, I mean, it frankly has not been the Democrats.
So to go back to the question I asked, not that this person is more influential than you, but say like a Bernie Sanders guy who does seem to represent.
I hope he's
I was
more
trying to give you the benefit of the doubt, my friend.
Thank you. Hopefully he's more influential than me.
But here's a guy that kind of is the poster child for the Democrats and, in my opinion, the crazy left shit that they spew, and yet he remains an independent and has all these years out of Vermont. Why not? I mean, for him, I could really give two shits, but I'm just curious about this. Why wouldn't he switch his party affiliation over to the Democrats?
Because I don't think the Democrats have ever been far enough left for Bernie Sanders. So I don't think that so he's been around through it all, right? So go back before the Newt Gingrich influence and the Tea Party and all of that.
Has he been around as long as Biden?
I think so, easily. And he's been a senator forever, right? So I think that, so in all that time, the Democrats were not nearly far enough left for him, right? He always, but remember how much farther right they were back then, right?
Yeah, I guess.
So, I mean, he's not far enough left for, the left fringe wing now, right? And frankly, his time is kind of passed. I mean, he had a couple shots at it. There was some influence there, and his, what seemed to be a relatively young base of support for him. Who knows what that's going to, turn out to be? I just don't think he just didn't hit the mark that Biden hit with these people. And I think he was a little too scary, right? And
no doubt.
And old.
Well, apparently old doesn't matter.
It doesn't make that much difference in politics. That's never been like an automatic you're out. I mean, we've had, Obama was a relatively younger president. Bush wasn't that old. Bush 2 or whatever we call him. Certainly Kennedy. We've had some youngish presidents.
What do we want? We want presidents in their 40s, early 50s. What do we want?
I think my preference would be, right around 60. Right
to go in and theoretically spend 8 years there and come out at 60.
Yeah, get out at. I think
why 60?
Just because I think there's a certain amount of life experience that is, and it can be. I mean, there can be exceptions. I think that certainly Obama wasn't 60.
I think he just turned 60, right?
He was just 50 or something when he became president.
I think that's right.
So, I mean, you have exceptions to all those kind of rules, but I'm not, and I'm not looking to exclude anybody from the possibility of being president based on their age. I mean, I think Rubio or Tucker Carlson, they're too young.
Well, we talked about this last week. There is a minimum age. Are you in favor
35.
of that?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I don't,
because you're really a dumb fuck before that.
Really not too bright. I mean, and you don't get that much. Look, and once you turn 35, you don't get that much smarter. It's just a matter of accumulating life experience. Why I think 60 is a pretty good age.
And also, I think maybe you have the ability to listen more? Maybe you're willing to listen to other people's ideas?
Maybe. I think so. I mean, certainly maturity and things. So that varies among people, right? So,
but was 35 was 35 60 back in the 1700s?
I don't know about that question. I know my mind, my brain, my thoughts haven't, internally I haven't felt any different since the age of 35. So certainly physically I feel different, but on the inside, and I think this is true of just about everybody. I think everybody, even when they get in their 60s and 70s, still in their mind, until they look in a mirror or something reminds them, they might as well be 35.
But you don't think you're mentally sharper than 35?
Mentally sharper?
Yeah.
I don't know. Farther away from smoking pot, so maybe.
Well, I mean, you've learned more. Don't you think you've developed your
I
critical
have
thinking
more
skills?
Knowledge, yeah, and I mean, wow, this will be a surprise to the listening audience. I'm pretty sassified with the way I think about things.
Well, you probably have been for a long time.
I have, but I think it's more true now than in the past. But I do. That's why I don't really mind. I mean, I just turned 65, and so hope I didn't just crush the dreams of thousands of listeners out there. I kind of doubt it.
You can still make your presidential run.
Thank you. Yeah. No, there's plenty of time for me. Are you kidding? I must have
You're thinking about it.
I must have like 13 years. Yeah. I think that I feel like my ability to suss through the nonsense, and have reasonable opinions about things has improved a lot. And part of that is that over the last, I don't know, probably starting, before Obama became president, I started to pay more attention, because for the first time at that point, there was a possibility before Obama was elected that there would be a woman president or a black president or a black woman president. Who knew, right? Things seemed possible. I remember talking to some friends out in Palm Springs before Obama was elected saying, well, I don't really think America's ready for a female president or a black president. So
anybody I know?
I wasn't putting any stock. I don't think so. But friends that own a house on a golf course, you'll know who you are. Except I don't think you're listening. But if you are, that's great. And we were out there, just in our hedonistic, sitting around in the pool in 100-degree weather, watching people play golf and talking about politics, but I wasn't that into it, at that point. And so I just remember making that statement and then eating shit afterwards, and we'll see. I think that for me, I would like to see a woman president, sooner rather than later. Right. And I don't particularly have a person
Do you
in
have
mind.
the voodoo doll in there that you're making this happen?
No, I mean, I think there are probably numerous people that I could think of at this point, and Hillary's not one of them. Okay, just so you know.
Give us an example.
This gal on the TV. Right here? No, sorry. Well, I mean, an example. I mean,
that wasn't your favorite.
Who could be? No. Who could be? Don't give me trouble. Who could that be? I mean, Klobuchar is impressive politician. Could she win a general election? I mean, she gave it a shot. I used to think that if you had given it a shot in a presidential election and you didn't win and you tried again, you were just a fucking loser. I don't want to mention any names, but there's a whole bunch on the Republican side that have done it multiple times, and Biden was one of them too. So that was the main thing. I thought, well, if once you run and you lose, you really don't have much of a chance. But obviously, that's nonsense.
Yeah, I think it's the complete opposite now that we've seen that. I think you're going to see more and more of that, especially as younger people, I think, maybe try to run.
Well, here's the thing. Biden and Trump and Bernie are making Klobuchar look like a cheerleader. So, I mean, she's, look, she's a smart politician with, I think, the right morals and certainly no radical agenda.
But that's not enough. You have to be. I don't know. What do you think it is? It's the relatability factor. I think even most people who are really into politics.
Biden wouldn't have won if the Democrats hadn't jumped behind him 100%. I mean, they're like, okay, this this is probably the guy, right? That's going to make sure Trump doesn't win.
I know. They dug him up. He didn't want to run. You know, he was coming off the grieving of one of his son's deaths, right? He's almost 80. And they convinced him.
I don't think he would have won if he ran the first time, right? When Hillary.
No, I don't think so. But I think you're right. I think it was more than just the Democrats getting behind him. I think it was the Democrats pushing him, saying, you know, he's a career politician, a serviceman to his country, and I think they framed it that way. Yeah. We need you.
And I think that was right. I mean, after the nonsense that was Donald Trump and all of that, we needed everything that Joe Biden is, and. But will we need that in the future? I don't know. I mean, so right now, talking about women politicians that might make good presidents, I mean, I think, so like I said, Klobuchar. I don't think Warren is electable.
Oh, God, no.
Right?
She's terrible.
So, and I don't know.
She's too much like Hillary in her delivery. And I've told you before, I've come around on Hillary where I've come to.
You don't hate her as much as
No, I don't hate her. And I do. And I actually like listening to her. I like hearing her ideas in interviews and things. But when she was campaigning, I feel that was not the real Hillary. They were trying to toughen her up. I think her team convinced her that she needed to be more manly, if you will, for lack of a better term, to compete with the boys. And
I think every woman that runs for that kind of office at that level is going to run into those issues, right?
For now, and you hope that as we progress as people in this country, we'll move away from that.
If I'm tough, am I a shrew? If I'm not tough, am I weak? If I cry over something, some gross slaughter of humanity that I might be witnessing as a high-level politician.
Not slaughtering pigs for bacon. That's another type of slaughter.
That's a California issue.
That's completely acceptable.
Let our governor cry over it. So.
But Warren, to me, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if she's expressed interest seriously. I mean, of course she ran, but I mean, did she really think that she was going to win? I don't think so. I think she uses her status and her celebrity as a way to drive the Democratic agenda, but she has to know she's not electable.
Yeah, she has an agenda, and she does wield a lot of influence, and she broke off and earned and kept and continues to keep part of that Bernie Sanders wing of the Democratic Party. That I think she has the same appeal to some of those folks that Bernie does, only less radical, if you can believe that. What I like about Warren is that she would be willing to hold immoral capitalists and corporations to the fire.
Can you have the word moral and capitalist in the same ideology?
Yeah, I can. I mean, I was wondering if you were going to pick up on that, but I mean, I think that there's nothing wrong with capitalism or being a capitalist, and we've talked about it, a lot, and I'm all for capitalism. But I don't think at any point the desire for capitalism to succeed requires or is mutually exclusive to being, to conducting yourself in a moral fashion, right? I mean, so yeah. So I mean, yeah, you can have a moral capitalist, right?
But really, it's a cap. The emphasis is on the word cap. They want to cap the rise of capitalism. How much?
Who wants to cap the rise? The Democrats.
The Democrats and Warren. It's more about.
Save it for her slogan.
Cap on capitalism. Cap on capitalism. That's what she wants.
I'm going to put a cap in your ass. Oh wait, that might be a good take.
Is
for
that
her.
Your what was your gas station attendant guy, Louis?
I got your capitalism right here, lady. Yeah. So I don't think Warren. I mean, Vice President Harris. We'll have to see. I mean, I think I mean, there's nothing about her that disqualifies her for me. Right now, I would like her to be the best vice president she can be, and as long as Joe Biden is the president, I think it benefits my team, if you want to look at it that way, to have a strong, duo at the top there. So, but certainly being a woman or being black or a Southeast Asian or whatever her heritage is doesn't have anything to do with it for me. And there's nothing about her that is screaming to me that I want her to be the president. or not want her to be the president. So my focus wasn't on her in this, in the primaries for this last general election, because my only concern was what it was. Right?
Getting Trump out.
Yeah. So,
and I think that's true. We had a discussion last week. I asked you the question, who was the most important vice president in history, and is Harris, does she take that title now? And we kind of had some debate about that. But
Hubert Humphrey. No.
But I would agree with you that both VPs in this last election, to me, I don't think were anything of importance in the sense that they weren't the deal breaker, they weren't the deciding factor, they were just accessories to the big, discussion and topic, which is Trump and his disastrous run as president, and is Biden the answer to that?
Well, assuming I will tell you what I remember from the last general election was the dynamic between Pence and Harris. So they really don't like each other, and he particularly doesn't like her for a variety of reasons. She's a woman. She's not white, and she didn't take his shit and probably would not bring him coffee. And did not tell him there was a fly in his fucking
That's
hair.
why.
So that would be interesting. I think it's going to be interesting to see if Mike Pence ends up running in 2024. And I think that would be he may run either way, but if he runs with any chance of success as far as bringing the Republican Party along with him, I think Trump would almost have to, bail out, die, stroke out, or something like that for that to happen.
Do you think,
he's certainly not going to be on Trump's ticket.
I guarantee you have not spent a lot of time thinking about this, but do you think that the Republicans will risk trying to put somebody new forward, or are they going to? Is it going to be Trump? Is it going to be Pence? Who else do they have? If they feel like this is their only shot of victory, we got to take out Biden now before he dies and Harris comes in, will they risk a newcomer?
In 24?
Yeah.
A newcomer. I think Pompeo has been jockeying for this job the whole time and still is. And he is a far right-wing Christian whack job. So worst, what was he, the Secretary of State? Worst Secretary of State since the one before him. What was the oil dude? Guy? Right.
Tillerson?
Tillerson. Yeah. Tillerson.
Was he only on the job like 8 weeks?
No. He was there years. Or
was
more.
it? It seemed like.
Oh my God! First off, they hated each other, Trump and him. He was the one that was quoted at about that 1 year mark of calling Trump a dumb motherfucker.
Remember that Trump actually was trying to get Romney to take that role, and Romney took the meeting.
Yeah, you know what? I think that was. I mean, I remember the meeting and all that, but I don't think Trump was ever serious about Romney taking Secretary of State.
I think so.
I think he brought him in there just to humiliate him.
I think the other way around. I think Trump was going to give him the job. I think Trump felt like that would give him some additional credibility and in a very serious role. And I think Romney took the meeting as a way to face-to-face tell him to go eat a bag of dicks.
Well, I'm not as big a Romney hater as I was as I was when he was actually running for president. Some of this, we talked about this a little bit, and I think it's interesting. Hillary was different than what we saw on the campaign trail, and apparently Romney is too. And I've seen him in other situations where it doesn't mean anything. It just means that he can be more likable in other situations. In a situation where he's trying to convince you he should be the president of the United States, he's repulsive and scary and stupid. And says stupid shit. Self-deportation, a binder of books.
What is self-deportation?
Well, when he was talking about immigration.
Is that the thing I've been talking about with the fly and where you go from one pod to the other, Brenda Fly?
No, not teleportation.
Oh.
So, yeah, his catchphrase from his presidential campaign was that the 11 million undocumented workers, for the most part, in this country at that time, that under his administration, they would be encouraged to self-deport. self-deportation.
Well, that's
Which
better
is
than saying we're going to round you up
not a
and
thing.
shackle you.
Right, but you know,
He was probably trying to compromise.
not a thing. Well, yeah, but you know, there's compromise and there's just stupidity.
So
right?
that would have been what, 2012?
Most likely, I think, yeah, without thinking about it too
And
much.
was Obama at that time, who would have been
He was
running
the
for a
president.
second term, was he talking about amnesty, for lack of a better term?
You know,
What was his position? I don't
well, I
remember.
mean, the Dreamers was a big thing for him, and immigration, frankly, wasn't a big issue.
Isn't the
at
Dreamers-
the time until Trump decided to run and came down the stairs? He made it an issue. It really wasn't on the front burner. Not that it didn't need to be, you know, addressed, but it certainly did not need to be addressed the way that Trump had, you know, build the wall and all that horse
Yeah.
shit. So he just saw immigration as another one of these divisive issues that he could use to try to bludgeon the Democrats with.
But was Obama at that time trying to implement the Dreamers Act and Romney's, so the Republican challenge to that was self-deport?
I don't think that Romney ever addressed the Dreamers. I mean, to be honest with you, the Dreamers have always been and was all during Trump's administration supported by the vast majority of the American public. Everybody thinks, hey, if you were brought here as a child,
That's it's for children, right?
Yeah, if you were brought here by a child, by your family that came
Is
here illegally
and is still
and
illegal, but
and
you're
you've
born.
been here since you were 2 years old or something, that there needs to be a way
right,
for
right.
you to, you know, become a citizen, stay in the country. So that was it. Here's the thing.
Is that, what's the other one? Is
Well-
it DACA? What's that
Well,
one?
that's DACA.
That's
Dreamers.
Dreamers? Okay.
Right. So I think that the reason why Romney was stressing self-deportation was, I mean, the fact was, let's see if you know this little bit of trivia that I know. Obama was known as the deporter in chief, right? He was deporting far more Hispanic, undocumented, what's the right word? Not to be, you know,
people
than Bush ever did, right? And so, I mean, there was a significant policy of this, especially regarding, you know, anybody involved in crimes and things like that.
Was he rounding people up, or was this people at the border?
You know, we hadn't seen the big influx of South American and Central American refugees from those places, because there was still a lot of aid going in to Honduras and El Salvador and different places to try to help the governments in those places keep a handle on the gang problems. But once he was gone, that was gone, and then it went wild, right? So, and I think that was partly planned on the part of the Trump administration. They wanted a lot of people coming to the border so they could create this fucking false panic at the border with the caravans and all the rest of this shit.
You guys, you give Trump so much more credit than I think he deserves.
You know what? It's not. And when I say that, and I can understand why you say that, but I want to push back on that considerably. And I know you're kind of joking around, but when I say that, I don't mean Donald Trump, the genius, right? The only thing he's good at is some innate ability to know when he needs to go on TV and be an asshole. And it will benefit him. Other than that, no. But you know, we will soon forget the amount of people that he had in his administration that were just fucking evil geniuses, right? Steve, what's his name? Steve Bannon. Boy, and I'm going to forget this guy's name, which is a sign that I'm recovering. But Miller, Stephen Miller, right?
We're recovering from what? The shock and awe of
from the nonsense, right? Stephen Miller, right? A little fucking Nazi in his own right. And who was and remains the architect of the anti-immigration policies that we saw throughout the Trump administration. The idea to put children in cages, that was Stephen Miller. Right?
Where was Trump and the Trump presidency? Because I don't really remember. What were they saying about the 11?
Were you on vacation?
No.
4 years?
I don't remember their position on the 11 million people here. Clearly, I know their position at the border and all that stuff, but what about the 11 million people entrenched in American society? Were they for rounding those people up?
How do I answer that question? I think so. Yeah. I mean, I don't know that there were official policies that you would be able to find on the internet and print out, and, but I mean, certainly.
Should we do what we always do and
certainly
make it up?
Stephen Miller, as the main architect of the immigration policy for the Trump administration, wanted to round them all up. I mean, if he'd had his way, right, there would have been ICE squads going around and just, picking people up.
Yeah, maybe that's right, because wasn't there a lot of stuff about ICE and local, county sheriff saying we're not going to enforce whatever ICE asks us to do in stopping people and checking IDs and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, ICE would typically, there was cooperation in the past between local law enforcement and ICE sometimes to get people that are incarcerated to come and get them, so if some local law enforcement picked up somebody undocumented that was a criminal, had a criminal record, was wanted for criminal charges, they were routinely calling ICE and saying, "Hey, we've got such and such. There's a warrant for him. Do you want him?" And instead of us running through the system, bailing him out and him disappearing, "Do you want him?" And they would come and get him. Because it got so overbearing, right? Many local law enforcement agencies decided, probably vis-a-vis their local city, county governments, to stop cooperating. And then I hate to even bring this up. So, sanctuary cities, sanctuary states doesn't mean anything, right? Everybody lost their motherfucking mind over that term during the Trump administration, as if that was some widespread Democratic.
But what do you mean it doesn't mean anything?
Well, let me explain what it does mean. What it meant was that law enforcement in those places were not going to turn over undocumented aliens that became part of the system, arrested for whatever, jaywalking, murder, whatever, anything in between, that they were not going to turn them over to ICE. That's what being a sanctuary city meant back then and means now, for what it's worth. So it doesn't really mean much, except that the law enforcement was not. So when they said sanctuary city, it just means, hey, we're not cooperating with federal authorities because we don't agree with their policies. And so in our local jurisdictions, we're not doing it. So that was never explained. It was never explained by anybody on the left. It was never explained by anybody on the right. It's just a very, very inflammatory dog whistle that was used repeatedly by right-wing media sources, by Fox News, by conservative politicians, by Trump, and never really explained. And I thought that the Democrats or the liberals did a fucking terrible job of explaining it. I mean, all the times that we've seen Mayor Yoga Pants or Villaraigosa or anybody trying to explain, defend the policies, never really had it explained. Just left what the sanctuary city means.
What do you think people? So if the rallying cry was,
I think they thought it meant that you could come here and flaunt all the immigration laws and stuff. That, hey, Los Angeles is a sanctuary city. Come here and we'll protect you from your flagrant violation of the law. That's never what it meant.
But don't you think the net effect is the same result, though, given what you said about the law enforcement's response?
I think that people are not, they never like the image of a jackbooted secret police coming and taking people out of their homes. I don't give a shit what the reason is, right?
So was that, was it the law? So, for example, maybe tell me if I have this right. ICE issues a warrant for somebody that they believe is illegal in the state of California, maybe in Los Angeles, and the local sheriffs or whoever is called upon to serve the warrant and go round that person up? Or was it, like you said, the guy got pulled over for speeding or jaywalking, and when they ran his record, they found out he was illegal?
Yeah, it was both.
Or was it both?
It was both. It was both. I mean, local law enforcement are like, hey, we're not going to enforce immigration laws. Those are federal laws. You want to enforce them, you enforce them.
And that agency would be ICE?
Yeah. And And so, yeah, I think that's all that ever was. And so when you had a city, you know, and the local law enforcement agencies associated with that city say to federal authorities, hey, we're not going out picking these people up for you. We're not expending our resources to do that. Those are federal laws. And if you want to go after them, you know, you're federal, you can go anywhere you want. And we're not going to cooperate with you when these people get in our jails. Because I think the feeling there was among the cities like Los Angeles and the other various places, probably, I don't know for sure, but probably, you know, up in Oregon and
San Francisco.
San Francisco. They felt that cooperation by local law enforcement with federal immigration authorities encouraged the undocumented population, no matter what their status was, whether they were in the process, trying to get in the process of normalization or whatever,
to stay quiet,
to stay underground, to be afraid to come forward, so that these were the people that were then subject to victimization by unscrupulous businesses that would hire them for labor jobs and not pay them correctly and not provide them the things that California law specifically, but you know, so I mean, I think that, and that just was never explained correctly. I think personally, my explanation of it right now is the best I've ever heard. So I just think that is just been a key difference between the way federal and local authority. Not everywhere. I mean, I'm sure in places in Pennsylvania or you know. What's the state? Georgia. I'm sure that there are
all of your favorite places.
There are plenty of local law enforcement agencies that are happy to cooperate with ICE, right?
Well, you know, I think philosophically that is one example, and I could cite others maybe that don't have the same gravity, where culturally people are deciding, no matter what their position is, if they're wearing a badge or not, what they believe is right or wrong. Which I think is a good thing, right? That's what is a culture? A culture is a group of people who agree to live by the same standards. And so that's an example of what happened and what the people in that community felt was right. And like I said, other examples that maybe don't have the same gravity would be enforcing marijuana laws, COVID laws. I mean, you name it. There's tons of examples.
And that type of disobedience, say, by one segment of the population toward some type of federal regulation or law, especially when it becomes codified by local law, like, for instance, marijuana laws, right? It's illegal at the federal level. It's legal in California or Denver, Colorado, or wherever, right? And then that is what we're seeing there is the way the federal law will eventually get changed.
Yeah,
it'll be a
I think
long time
isn't the
coming.
official term "fuck the feds"?
Well, maybe. I don't know. Maybe down in Mission Viejo. I'm not sure.
I don't think I was going to ask you for an update on the voter suppression laws, but since we were talking about immigration, what do you think about should people who are in this country illegally be allowed to vote?
I don't think so. I think you need to be a U.S. citizen.
Well, that's the law, but I'm asking you your opinion.
I think it should be the law. No, I think that should be the case. I mean, I think that we need to keep so that's a great peripheral question to the whole voter rights suppression.
And the reason I bring it up is there is a movement, particularly here in California, where people are arguing for that right because they say, you know, we're here illegally, we're out of the shadows, but we're part of the community, we're working, we're paying taxes, we're driving on these roads, our kids are in school, and so we are paying to be part of this community, therefore we should have a voice by way of a vote.
I think that they're pretty far away from that.
Well, I think so too, and the question is,
I don't have any pushback on the fact that you're telling me that that's occurring. I mean, off the top of my head, having never heard that before, a couple of comments I'll make. One, I don't think that's the case, so I don't agree with that premise or that outlook. The benefits you get for staying here is not voting, right? It's a better quality of life. It's better economic opportunity. And I think all of that they're entitled to if they're here. I mean, here's the thing. If people are here undocumented or illegally or however you want to look at it, and we're employing them as a society, and we have to tell ourselves to fuck off and just get over it, right? So because if you really didn't want that, then it wouldn't be the case. So, but when you're going to just make that leap from, hey, I'm here and I should be able to vote, I think that still needs to be, voting needs to be a privilege and a right for an American citizen, period. And I think that what I would say to that is that I would be totally in favor of a much more liberal, lenient, easier, I don't know how to put it, path to citizenship.
What should that look like? Because a lot of countries...
It should be an application, and it should be a combination of, the time you've been here and what your record is as a person living here and so forth.
How do you get here if you can't get here?
Well, but you're here, right? So
some
of you were born here.
Not, or if you're trying to do it as the Trump Republicans would say, the right way, and apply and get in line. Well, if you can't get here, how do you get here?
Well, here's the thing. As long as we're employing the ones that are here willfully on purpose, then we need to provide them a way to become legal, right? Otherwise, we need to stop employing them. You need to fire your gardener, get rid of your hair beautician, stop eating at restaurants, right?
Is there some penalty for employers if you hire illegal workers?
There is.
Right. Is there? I'm asking.
Yeah, there are penalties.
Yeah. But so you're supposed to fire them if they're illegal, right? You're not supposed to hire them in the first place.
Here's the thing. Let me give you an example. What's your favorite restaurant chain? What's the
Hardee's.
eating good in the neighborhood? Applebee's. Pick any one that you like, and in the back there are people they're undocumented workers working in that restaurant, bussing the tables, washing the dishes, doing the cleanup, doing food preparation, maybe even waitressing, right? Okay, if you really think that that's wrong, right, then stop going to those fucking restaurants. And that means all of them.
You're saying for the people the patrons of the restaurant.
Yeah, right. Go talk to your gardening service and find out which of the 4 or 5 guys that come and work at your house every week are here legally, right? But nobody's enforcing that. Nobody's doing
because
that.
People don't want to know. They put their head in the sand.
Right. And so because
they want that service, they want that haircut, they want that French fry.
So because of that,
Tater
we
tots.
as a society should provide a path to citizenship for all of those people. Do what you can at the borders, right, to try to control your borders, right? Do it humanely. None of it's a crisis. This shit since I don't even know when, right? Since before, right when the Trump thing started, right? The rhetoric that the right has put up about immigration, even today, right? There's a huge part of the Republican Party or the conservative right or whatever you want to call them that is trying to blame illegal aliens for the rise in COVID numbers, which is fucking stupid. Okay. The reason there's a rise in COVID numbers is because we're only at 50% vaccinated in this country. That's because half the people are wrong about this.
Well, the other part I would add to the COVID thing is that I thought it was higher than 50%, by the way.
No, nationally.
Nationally.
Yeah.
But it's because people are wrong about getting vaccinated, and it's because they don't care, and they don't care that they are part of the spread. They're not worried about their personal safety. They don't want to be told what to do. So there's that whole movement.
Well, I think all of that, but the vast majority of those people are people on the right. I mean, I don't know how else to. I mean, you just have to look and see. And then there has been so much damage done from COVID misinformation put out by the former Trump administration throughout the whole time of the pandemic that we have a substantial number of people that are probably not self-identifying as Trump supporters, but are afraid and believe that there's some reason why they should not get the vaccine. So,
but things are changing rapidly, and You know what's fascinating about this? Yeah, let me make a point here.
Yeah, go ahead.
You and I agree on a lot of things, I think, fundamentally, right? And we're on opposite ends of the political spectrum, but on the COVID side, we're both vaccinated. We're both fully vaccinated with quotes.
Yeah, I'm just waiting to go get my booster. I'm already tracking the 8 months.
That was going to be what I was going to ask you.
Yeah,
so here, there's information now about boosters. I don't remember if we talked about this on the air or not, but there's the 6-month data is out on the vaccines, and it turns out the Pfizer vaccine, which we all thought was the Cadillac of vaccines,
not as good as Moderna.
No, and its efficacy is down to like 40-something% after 6 months.
So I saw some of those numbers too, so I'm glad I had a chance to catch that graphic because I can still see it. So Moderna, which happens to be the one I got, is still up at about 76%. So if you got it back in January, your protection now is down from 95 to 85% for Moderna, and it's lower on the Pfizer one. And I don't think there are any statistics for the other ones yet. So that's from catching it. They both are giving you 100% protection from dying from COVID. And that also runs the hospitalization. So being vaccinated means a couple of things. Straight up, and it's all it means, you have 100% guarantee you're not going to die from COVID-19 or any variant thereof. And you're not going to be in the hospital.
I don't think it's quite 100.
Well, the number I saw today for deaths from COVID, whereas for vaccinated people, is currently standing at 100%.
I got to check that. I thought I read some articles about a couple of vaccinated people kicking the bucket.
I don't know about that. And I'm sure some vaccinated people are going to kick the bucket, but the question would be: is it from COVID or not? But anyway, that's the current number on that.
And as far as the misinformation, I think this is where it's a slippery slope because
we know people personally in our close orbit that have not gotten vaccinated. Mm-hmm. They're not Trump supporters. They're not conservatives. They have no political knowledge whatsoever. And they have, for some reason, decided not to get vaccinated because they think they're going to get sick. That can only be a result of misinformation that came down from, and it's not the Democrats, it's not the liberal, it's from Trump. I mean, it's from that group. They put it out all through COVID, and they continue to spew it out right now, and it filters its way to the most vulnerable segments of the population that probably have the least motivation, the least time, or the least ability to take all the information and get the right answer out of it. So they're coming away from it afraid. I mean, this can be as simple as, hey, I don't want to get the vaccination because I'm afraid it's going to make me sick for 3 days, and I can't miss 3 days of work. I mean, it can be that simple.
Yeah, but I think I'm just trying to think about the people that I know, and I would not say 100% of them cite that reason. They're afraid of being sick. Maybe it's
what other reason have you cited any reason to you?
That they're just anti-vaxxers. They don't get the flu vaccine or anything else. And I don't know that it's true. That's just the answer that I've heard. And that it's not experimental, but it's not fully approved. And they want to wait and see if, the long-term effects. The last one is, I don't think I need it because I'm healthy and I've made it this far and I'm not going to get sick.
Right. All stupid conclusions that would not be that would not have proliferated if there hadn't been so much misinformation pumped into the whole mix. So we don't have to agree on that. I mean,
I want to think that's only a part of it, though. I just think.
Why do you think that's only a part of it?
Because I think that people are the world has changed so rapidly, and it's continuing to change. And I think that they are just. I don't know. We've had these conversations about individualism versus collectivism, and are we part of a greater society, or is it every man for themselves? And I think that that's the shift that I see culturally is this idea that we're all out to protect ourselves, and it's more of our government can't be trusted. And yes, all the elements in there about information about vaccines and the prior administration is part of that. But I think that it's this overall mistrust of government, and that's where the messaging is coming from. I almost just wonder, turn it around. Let's say that the drive was from your local church who you go to and you trust, or your school, if it didn't come from the government that already has very low credibility, I just want to believe that maybe it wouldn't be like this.
The thing I hear about this often in reply is that, and I think maybe you and I had this exchange on previous podcasts. Well, the government doesn't make the vaccine.
Right.
Right. But that's not the point. The government is promoting getting the vaccine to help get the whole COVID thing down to a level that we can live with. Trying to avoid this from happening. And when I say this, I mean trying to avoid COVID-19.
Illegal spreading COVID.
Say it again. What?
Illegal spreading COVID.
I think they're trying to avoid COVID-19 and future variants from becoming endemic, right?
But it will be. It will be.
It's not, Trav. I get that you probably have a gut reaction that makes you think that that's the case because you're convinced this is just another strain of the flu.
No, but isn't that also true? Like every year, I get the flu shot. I never
Flu,
know which shot I'm getting, and I know there's multiple strains of flu.
The flu is neither an epidemic nor a pandemic, and it's endemic,
yeah.
and it is not the same animal as COVID-19.
But the point is the same, that it's still with us, and the medicine doesn't.
There was never going to be a way to vaccinate ourselves out of the possibility of getting the flu. That was never a possibility. It is a possibility now, and if we miss it, it will be our fault as a society, as a world, that COVID-19 becomes endemic on the world stage.
What's the duration of time you need to look at to call it endemic? And so we've talked about this. Polio, for example, once the vaccines arrived, took 20 years to eradicate. I think in this country anyway.
I'll take your word for it. I know zero about that.
But I wonder
that vaccines, immunization, did eradicate polio in this country.
That's exactly right. And I wonder what the vaccination rates.
There's no vaccine that can eradicate the flu.
Well, and or
because
COVID at this point.
It's flu. It's not polio.
And or COVID at this point.
It's not COVID. Yeah.
I know, but even the vaccines don't eradicate COVID.
But we could so that it could burn out on its own.
Yeah, and I think that is ultimately what will happen. So the question is, over what time period? Is it 10 years, 20 years?
Well, it won't happen if it becomes endemic. Then it'll never happen. You will have missed the shot. You don't have forever to figure this out. So with this kind of viral pandemic, you have a short period of time to get it eradicated. Otherwise, if it is allowed to continue, which is what we're doing right now by allowing the country to be at 50% instead of mandating immunization right now for the good of the public health, that we're going to give COVID-19 and whatever variant name comes up with a chance to mutate multiple times into something that is going to be not only endemic but deadly. On a long-term basis.
Right? I mean, it could be. That's the concern, is that the mutations could get to a level where it actually is what I always refer to as the Black Plague, which COVID is not, nor ever was. But remember, there's two other pieces.
Can be.
Possibly.
Yeah.
And nobody, including myself, as much as I like to joke around, want to take that chance.
Okay.
But there's two big points that we're missing here. One is children still can't get vaccinated.
Let's fucking immunize them. Let's go.
Well, we're not there yet. And also internationally, we can only control what happens within these borders. And I know there are some countries around the world that have very high vaccination rates, and others are right there on par with us. So,
well, but here's the thing so how do you handle that?
Right.
I think that everybody in the United States, except the very most liberal among us, feel that we should all get immunized first.
Who? The United
Americans,
States?
yeah. And
isn't that what we did?
Even get our third shots.
Exactly.
as soon as that is
Fuck
feasible.
the Israelis. Give me your third shot.
Oh, but here's the thing, right? So then we turn our attentions to, doing whatever we can do, and it would be absolutely significant to pump vaccinations out to the rest of the world. I don't think frankly, I think the rest of the world will be a hell of a lot more receptive to it than the very, and I'm going to try to say this because I actually have people that I care about quite a bit that are misguided on this issue. so I'm going to refrain from the hyperboreal rhetoric and just say that I doubt seriously that there are going to be, once it becomes available to the entire world, that everybody that can get it will get it. There will be no significant faction of people that don't believe in it. They're all crying out for it now. Please vaccinate us before my parents die, before my children die, before my grandparents die, before whatever, before my economy is destroyed. Please get us the vaccination. This is just another this is just another thing that happens in a society where you have too much fucking time on your hands and you don't understand and you're not grateful enough for what you have access to, right? So we have a chance to eradicate this thing out of this country and move on and try to eradicate it out of the world before it gets out of control, through some silly, senseless, baseless political views and wrong-minded opinions about the different and, stupid ideas about the difference between freedom to make your own decisions and selfishness on a scale the world has never seen before. A lot of wrong decisions are being made in this country. I do hope, right, like you hope that people come around. And it does appear to be happening.
And here's what I am in favor of. Again, I'm in the vaccinated crowd.
You are.
And half of my household is, and when the other half is eligible, we'll do the same. But
do they have any vaccinations yet?
Yeah, they have.
The kids?
They do. They have. I forget the name, but whatever you need to have
all
to
the
go
ones,
to school.
Measles and
yep,
whooping cough and all that shit. Right?
And today, by the way,
yeah,
first day of school.
Yeah,
back already in August. I can't believe it.
Was this the first day of school for your school district or?
Yes. Yeah.
Private school. Okay.
School district.
Some private schools are going back the end of this month. L.A. went back yesterday. That was only a 8-hour process. If you were a parent taking your young grade schooler to school, you had to take off work and you were stuck there all day.
Yeah, it's a whole thing, and because of COVID protocols. So the public schools here are back in business, in-person learning, mask mandates, no parents past the campus gates. There's a whole check-in
system. Is your
system.
wife at the school right now? Are your children too young to go to school?
No, they're in school. Yeah,
they're in school?
First day today.
Okay.
And the week, it's like kind of a...
Kindergarten or first grade?
Kindergarten.
Wow.
Yeah. And a short day today, and then the rest of the week starts to ramp up.
Okay.
But to enroll, you have to be vaccinated. You have to show proof of that, not for COVID, of course, but for all the kid shit that you need. Right. And I'm in favor of that, and that's the point I was going to make.
Okay.
I have to, just in my core, and I would have told you this before COVID because it's what I believe this country is about, and more so.
You and I would have never talked about disease if it wasn't for COVID.
I know, and we started this conversation on Afghanistan, and we never even got there, which we will.
We'll always get back to COVID.
But I would have told you before COVID, and I think the way I've phrased it before is I think there are things that people should always do. But there's a difference between what you should do and what you should be required to do. So in my core, I have to say it on record, I'm just opposed to going door to door and jabbing people. But I think people should do it. I have done it. I walk my talk. But I am in favor of it being pulled through society the way it currently appears that it's being done.
You're right.
Which is, institutions, travel, airplanes, trains, grocery stores, business, individual businesses, universities, movie theaters.
Yeah.
Any of these people that are now requiring their employees to do it. I'm in favor of that because at the end of the day, the choice still lies with the individual. And that, for me, I think we have to protect. And I hate to say it because of COVID because it is this important. But let's say it wasn't COVID and some parallel that we can't think of at the moment. You just want to make the individual decision down to the person. And if they don't want to play by the rules of society, then they don't get to be in society.
Well, I think I could agree with that position far more than I use. I mean, listen, here's the thing. As I hear horror stories about results of low vaccination rates, I probably go back and forth a little bit, right? Some days I'm like, yes, that totally makes sense. If you're not going to get the thing, no jackbooted former ICE agents should come to your door and inject you against your will. However, if you decide that you don't want to be immunized against COVID, then you may have to stay in your house.
Right. If the whole world shuts you out because there's no modern conveniences that you can be a part of because you won't comply, I'm okay with that.
Right.
Go if you want to go be a homesteader and live on a hippie commune and educate your kids and grow your own food, that should be your choice.
Right.
But, I think that will ultimately be how we drive this thing through.
I think so. And, funny how that has a bit of a parallel to the immigration discussion we were having. I mean, so I firmly, especially after having run a business for so long where I must have employed over the years hundreds of straight up illegal, undocumented, workers from Mexico. Although every one of them,
you would fire them if they had a child support claim.
I would. Don't bring your shit. Don't bring your trash to my yard. Get off my yard. Get off my lawn. But I mean, here's the thing, right? So I think businesses should be required to. I mean, it's just so hypocritical to, on the one hand, say, well, nobody that comes here illegally should be able to work or do anything and blah, blah, blah. And you're saying that while you're eating your tostada at the Red Onion Mexican restaurant and all your food was prepared by someone who's undocumented and all the food on your plate that grew out of the ground was picked by people from Mexico.
Isn't it
just
safe?
Bullshit.
Isn't it safe to assume now that those people are documented, but they've provided false documents? Because you got to provide something.
Well,
right?
I mean, here's the thing. I know that if people are given the opportunity to have real documents, they'll get real documents. And if you won't provide them that opportunity, then they will get fake documents, right? Just like, hey, if you're rich and you can't get your kid into school legitimately because they're an influencer and they've never done jack shit to earn their way into college, you can get fake documents that show they're polo players or dick suckers or whatever it is, and you can get them into an Ivy League school.
Yeah.
People do what they're going to do. And so as a society, I don't think we want to change anything as far as, and we want to get harder, and we want to come down harder on people that falsify documents and things to get their worthless fucking kids into Ivy League schools. And we want to lighten up and provide a path to citizenship for all 11 million of the undocumented workers that are currently in this country, and more in the future. If we let them in, if we can't figure it out, and we let them in, and then we utilize their services here, right? We utilize their labor because it makes things cheaper and it's easier, blah, blah, blah. Then we need to shut the fuck up about how wrong it is and this and that, and get to the work of immigration reform, right? A legitimate function of the Congress that neither side is making happen.
So what should that look like? And so let's maybe use this to transition into Afghanistan, which is a catastrophe, watching that unfold.
Yeah.
But, there's a lot of talk politically about the fact that as Americans, we owe it to the Afghani people to allow asylum, right? Allow the people to come here, the refugees. That's the word I'm looking for.
Well, okay. So big difference between, refugees and interpreters and government and U.S. collaborators that are going to be slaughtered. So what's happening in Afghanistan right now is the Taliban is telling everybody, hey, listen, if you're a trash collector, if you're a dog catcher, if you're helping to run the electrical grid, if you're the newscaster, if you're running the city hall, get back to work. You're safe. We're fine.
They're telling everybody they're safe.
Right.
Even women. You're
right.
safe. You can get your education.
Right. And that's what and so remember now they've been
cut
marching.
the amount of beatings in half.
They've
so
been marching. Yeah. They've been marching through the principalities of Afghanistan for several weeks now. And they said the same thing in all the far away provincial capitals far away from what's the one they're in right now?
Kabul.
And because when they come into the town, they just can't have every function of society cease immediately because Taliban's in the street. Otherwise, everything goes.
Which kind of did it because people were like, they put their arms up and they said, okay.
But then they said, hey, put your arms down, get back to work, you're going to be fine. And then once the news crews are out of that province and things have passed, then the shit hits the fan.
slaughter begins.
Yeah, and that's what's going to happen in Kabul. But in the short term, so we have people that have collaborated with us, and it does appear to me, I have a lot of criticism for the Biden administration, and I'd be willing to listen to criticism about it. I think in the long term, this is a blip for this administration. They're going to get by.
I'm surprised to hear you say that.
Well, I figured you might be.
I was going to ask you that very question.
Yeah. I think that it's such a big issue
Because what you just said is he's taken a lot of shit, and mainly from the right, that this is a blip, a failure, and blah, blah, blah. But I think that if any president in his position right now in the month of August when the troops were drawn down, because this started under Trump, right? Let's not forget.
Well, the drawdown didn't, but the negotiation.
did.
The stupid negotiation with the Taliban, but go ahead.
Yeah, but the point is this, that I think this is an example that I've cited before where I don't give a lot of credit nor blame to presidents over various things. I don't blame fucking presidents when there's a goddamn hurricane.
Yeah.
And I don't blame Biden for the fact that the Taliban has taken over the country in a matter of weeks. And all the people on the right in Fox News and everything else are showing the clips from Biden a couple of months back saying what will happen. Yeah. And Biden is saying this will not happen. Yeah. It's secure and blah, blah. And it didn't. And he's taken a lot of shit. Yeah. That's not his fault.
Well, I think that, I watched a lot of his speech yesterday, and
how was that? Was he blabbering?
No, it was good.
Okay.
I'm sure it's totally available to see. He does make some excuses. He does say, hey, one of the reasons we didn't get more of the Afghani collaborators out of the country was they didn't want to go. When we offered to take them earlier, they didn't want to go. Because remember.
Which group is this?
Well, Afghan U.S. collaborators, right? So whatever that is, whether you're an interpreter or you're a taxi driver, whatever you were doing for U.S. We had thousands of people there, right? Plus Americans, troops, plus American citizens. Okay, so having said all that, one of the things that is being called an excuse on his part is that the reason we didn't get more Afghani collaborators out is because they did not want to go. But remember, we spent $1 trillion. Right?
How many people in this collaborator group would you say? Is it in the millions?
No, but it could be 10,000 or more.
Okay.
So then you have so we spent $1 trillion outfitting, supplying, training a 300,000 man force of Afghani.
That's $1 trillion over the 20-year period.
That's $1 trillion over the 20 and just in the last couple of years, billions, right? And they had an armed force of 300,000 with all the latest weapons, vehicles, everything, support, Air Force, everything they needed, and they simply laid down their arms and left.
And by the way, I think the number of the Taliban that I read is only like 75,000.
It's not that much, right?
Compared to 300,000 on the troop side.
Well, and I think that Biden, in his speech yesterday, one of the things he said, which I think, and I could have written this part of the speech, it's pretty self-evident, you can supply tanks, guns, tech stuff, you can supply all of that stuff to the Afghan military, but you can't supply the will. If they don't want to fight for their country, then you can't make them. It doesn't matter.
I think
how long you stay
that's
there.
Accurate. Yeah, just by the numbers alone, if 75,000 can conquer an armed military of 300,
right? So could the events that we're seeing take place right now? Could this have been done better? Maybe. Okay. So what Biden did say in this speech yesterday was, and this won't be enough for some people. Certainly, it won't be enough for Fox News or Newsmax or any of these asswads. But hey, the buck stops here. That's something you never heard Trump say in 4 long, tedious years. You never heard him take responsibility for a single thing ever. And
this is not a criticism then of Biden.
Well, I mean, listen, I think he would have been a fool to not take the blame for something that's happening on his watch. So I guess what I'm saying is his remarks yesterday, which were really the first address to the American people regarding this situation, things happening awfully fast. Yesterday was Monday.
Yeah.
The government virtually fell. The Afghan government virtually
Sunday,
fell
right?
over the weekend.
Yeah.
So I don't think anybody expected it to fall that fast.
No.
I guess what was happening, I heard Richard Engel. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's a great foreign war correspondent, and he kind of cleared up what's been happening. Afghani defense forces have been meeting with Taliban and local tribal chiefs all across the country for several weeks, making agreements that when the time came, they would simply lay down their arms and blend into the population. And that's exactly what's happened. They haven't fired a fucking shot
Right.
in this whole thing.
That seems to be a point that I think is causing some concern and confusion in this country with everyday people. Like, wait a minute, the Taliban didn't come in there and take it by force? What do you mean? That's not conventional warfare as people are used to it.
Well, they had all the guns that they could possibly have, right? They had all the armaments, all the tanks, all the transports, all the Humvees, all the helicopters, missiles, everything. Guess who's got it all now? So I think there's some criticism there.
What did Biden say in the speech or anywhere else if the U.S. is prepared to recognize the Taliban as the government?
I have not heard him address that.
Because
all he's ever said is that if they assume power in this manner, they would not be recognized as a legitimate government. That's probably going to change. He's not spouting that rhetoric at this moment.
Because I read that China said the exact opposite. And
well, of course, China wants to be
anticipation of this moment that we would.
I hope the Taliban's ready because they're getting ready to jump in bed with the big dictators. So,
I think so.
Right.
So what does that really
mean?
Who
knows, right? I mean, Russia tried to go in there 40 years ago, and they lost their ass. And so, yeah, Taliban has made security agreements with Russia. Big fucking deal, right? Hey, let Russia and China have the fucking Middle East. Just, what are you going to do, right? You just can't. Nation building is a fool's errand, right? And it always was. And frankly, I was never in favor of going into Afghanistan. I was never in favor of Iraq.
I thought you were on Afghanistan.
I mean, who wasn't in favor of going after the
Bin
people
Laden.
that did 9/11, right? But it is certainly, there was never a second that I would have envisioned a 20-year engagement in Afghanistan. So,
isn't that what
mistake.
the opponents to that
listen,
said?
I said when Bush. When we went into Afghanistan and then soon thereafter into Iran, in both situations, I was opposed to it because I am a child from Vietnam. I've already seen this movie, and yeah, what a surprise. It's turning out the same. You cannot, I didn't, probably as a naive fool, I did not think the United States would ever engage in a Vietnam-type conflict, civil war like this again, and especially this one where there was apparently no real oil motive other than, there's oil in these places, but it was never in the plan to take any of it.
But isn't the reason that we stayed so long, wasn't the argument by prior administrations that we can't leave now because ... bad shit will happen. We've got the momentum. The Taliban will take over. Even Obama, right? I mean, he wasn't really. I think he campaigned. We've talked about this on drawing down the troops, and then that's one of the things
close down Gitmo, get out of the Middle East.
That he realized he could never really do.
Well,
he was convinced. He was led to believe, maybe is a better way to say it, that it was not the responsible thing to do, and that America's interests and global interests were better served for us being there.
Maybe. So is that a mistake that Obama made? Maybe.
Yeah, and so are we saying that does Biden have support here?
Well,
what's the deal?
No, we shouldn't have gone in. We shouldn't have stayed in. We should have got out when Obama was in, and we should have got out when Trump was in. But none of those guys, none of those guys could face. From the minute we stepped into Afghanistan, we knew this would be the outcome.
Not that this matters, but do you think if Trump was still in office, he would have executed the troop drawdown?
I don't think he would have ever wanted to face this barrage of bad PR, to be honest
You
with
think? He seems like he welcomes bad PR.
Mm,
Wouldn't that be another opportunity for him to go up and say, see, throw tomatoes at me, you fuckers, you hate me?
I don't know. But I will say that I do, for me personally, my personal assessment of this situation is that President Biden looked at this situation and said, hey, it is not in our national best interest to stay there any longer. We can't accomplish the nation building that has been touted as one of the reasons we're there. We can't stay there forever. That won't be in our best interest. And, I think the tolerance by the American people to have our soldiers dying in Afghanistan, even if the casualties were down to a very low amount, still so heart-wrenching every time you heard about some Humvee that hit an IED, not an IUD. Those don't usually explode.
They
from
don't.
What I understand. I
think they can cause pain and discomfort.
Yeah. So, I just think that, hey, there's no good outcome for this. I think Biden decided to bite the bullet. Here's what I think. This will not be a long-term PR problem for Biden administration. I'm going to guess easily 70% of the total U.S. population is solidly in favor of getting the fuck out of there. Everybody is disheartened by the scenes of heart-wrenching, scenes.
Well, did you see the people on the planes cramming into the cargo planes?
Yeah, I mean, you're a big guy about personal responsibility. I think if you jump onto the wheel of a moving aircraft, the resulting the results are your own personal responsibility. I don't know.
Well, those people got left there or ran over, presumably.
Some of them get killed
because the airplanes were full of people. I saw this one image. What was it? A C-130 with like 600 people just literally sitting on the deck.
I know that what I did watch a news conference today, and I don't have the guy's name, but he was the Pentagon spokesman, uniformed military general. He said that all of the people that bum rushed into the airport have been removed out of the airport. They're not in there waiting for flights. They overran the fences and the gates and stuff before they had enough security. So they're out, and now they are processing U.S. citizens first, embassy personnel, and so forth, and then and they are also processing some number of Afghanistan collaborators, interpreters, and so on and so forth, and their families. It's supposed to go on until the end of the month. It could go on longer. We're going to have 6,000 troops. I think we have 4,000 there today. So we should be able to hold the airport until we're done. Now, the question is, if you're an Afghani U.S. supporter, Afghani that was some type of U.S. supporter, interpreter, or something else, and you're not in the airport now, or mainly you're not in Kabul now, you are probably in trouble.
So that's the question is, what if the Taliban interferes with not only the removal of U.S. troops, which was one of Biden's direct asks, I think, is, hey, stand down, let us get our people out, and the collaborators too. But I've also read stories about for Afghani citizens that the passport offices are closed already. So I mean, they're not even processing people to be able to leave legally because they want to keep everybody enclosed and captured within the country.
They put these people into some groups that they were referring to as P1 and P2. I don't know what that stands for, but one of those groups, P2, was something like some secondary group of interpreters and U.S. collaborators, things like that. So I don't think that I don't think anybody is saying that unassociated Afghan nationals that just want to get out of the country are going to be leaving through this airport anytime soon.
Right.
I think that they are saying that they're going to they want to get this up to somewhere between 4,000 and 9,000 people a day. That's one 52 sorties a day. So one plane in, one plane out every hour. And they're not there yet, but that's where they're going.
Where do they fly to?
Well, I mean, it depends who they're flying, but a lot of the collaborators are being flown to India or Pakistan, right?
Because that's any better?
Well, it's not Taliban controlled.
It's not?
Right? There are actual governments there.
Don't they train the Taliban there? Don't they?
I don't know.
Aren't they a Taliban supporter?
I think they're going to be training him in Afghanistan. No, Pakistan's not a Taliban supporter. Pakistan and India are, they're not friends, but they're and most of these people would like to go to India, where it's a lot more civilized. Even the Pakistan is another notch down.
You just can't drink the water in India.
Yeah, I just love it. I hope you're immunized. I hope you didn't fuck around. You got your immunization.
Isn't this whole thing fucking ridiculously crazy that, the Taliban, why are they so backwards? Why do they want to, it's all these religious fucks. Why?
Is this where we take the road down the religious path?
I guess. I mean, why do people care? Why do they want to force women to wear a veil and not get an education and stay in their homes and be escorted by a male blood relative? It's all fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the answer to that. I think that
are those people good for the world to have views like that?
I do not personally think so.
Is there something that we can inject them with, some type of chemical warfare to wipe out these fucking maniacs who think this way?
I don't think so.
Would you support my cause if I tried to do this?
I don't think so. This type of zealotry, right, that we see in the Muslim world, in the Middle East specifically, although there are affiliates of Taliban and Al Qaeda by different names in Africa and different places, especially North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, and it's all over that area, right? And the radicalized part of this, and why, 75,000, that's nothing.
I know,
right? That's nothing. I mean, 75,000 people is a big football game.
So does that make you're right about that? Does that make you think at all about the United States and, what type of numbers it would take to whether it was an attempt to have a real insurrection on January 6th or anything in between, like what we talk a lot about, the divisiveness and the people in this country that are divided and the radicals and all of that. If it only takes 75,000 to take over Afghanistan, what do you think it would take in the U.S.?
A couple of things. Unpack that a little bit. I'm going to get to that the actual source of your question, but I want to address something you said on the way there, the insurrection. So I think that we should deal with this. We should deal with that occurrence, what we saw by those people, and we should deal with those people as harshly as we possibly can. We should prosecute them as vigorously as possible. Whatever we're spending on investigating the people responsible for that, we should triple it and really dig in. I think that the Congress and the President administration should dig into the root causes of why that happened and go after every single person that was involved in that for sedition and insurrection. And I think that that they should use there is existing law that should be used to prohibit Donald Trump from running again, and it is a specific law that says, hey, if you participated in an insurrection, you cannot run for federal office. Having said that, okay, I think we should move on. I don't think that thing that happened there that we call the insurrection is indicative of every person on the right of the entire Republican Party. I think it only speaks to the people that were there that day and to the people in that administration that caused it to happen. Other than that, let's move on. Let's get going.
And I would agree with most of that. I push back primarily on calling it an insurrection because it wasn't. Those people there that day, that was not an attempt to take over the U.S. government and to gain control like we saw in Afghanistan. It was all that stuff that you said about prosecuting and coming down as hard as we can on those people. I'm all in favor of that, but that was not an attempt to take over the government.
Well,
to rule the government.
I think that everything we saw Trump do in the last stage of his administration wasn't attempted coup.
You could convince me of that too. You could convince me that he was culpable. And there's a lot of scholarly debate on
I'll give it
first.
to you, Trump. I'll give it to you, Trump. Jesus, I'll give it to you, Travis. Don't call it an insurrection. I don't care, but definitely convict Donald Trump of participating or what's the right word? Inspiring.
What you said,
inciting an insurrection.
Yeah.
Right?
Listen, like I said, you could convince me of that as whatever.
He's not fit to be the president again.
Well, that's true too.
Not be allowed to run.
That's all true. But you said something else in there that caught my ear. The cause of it. What do you think? I mean, how do we ever get there? How do we get to what the cause of that was?
Well, it's easy. There's no mystery there. Let's not mystify.
Well, I'm
okay. The cause was the concerted, conspiratorial effort by the Trump administration and the Republican National Committee to promote
election fraud.
Yeah, well, to promote the big lie that there was some kind of widespread election fraud, and that this presidential general election was not valid. And
but isn't there more to that? Because there really was never any evidence, right? So let's say you're in the Trump camp, and your people, Trump and your leaders, are telling you must go do this because they stole it from us, and then they never produced any evidence, then or now.
Right.
So then the people still did it. So what's the disconnect between the followers and the thinkers?
I think there's a reasonable expectation by the people of the United States that instilling that idea by that administration into the populace that the general election was stolen from them, and because that is patently false, right? That constitutes inciting to insurrection, and that is a federal crime.
Is it because you're taught to respect authority, and so the people in power are telling you this, and so you're called to action by your country?
Those guys bear responsibility for this, right? Trump bears responsibility for what happened at the Capitol and for all of the continuing negative shit that's going on in connection with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm more with you there than I'm not. And because he was a sitting president. If it's Trump, the reality TV guy, I think that's a different argument.
Well, he wouldn't have been able to get those people to.
Yeah, probably not. But I don't know. Maybe he was running for president, right? And maybe he wasn't the sitting president. I don't know, right? That remains to be seen. But
How many people would it take? Oh, go ahead.
Well, no, I would agree that because who he was at the time, that's a different level of craziness.
Right. I mean, listen, Trump, the big mouth heckler from the audience during Obama's what do they call that? The press dinner or whatever, where
correspondence dinner.
That Trump does not have the same responsibility that President Trump had.
Right.
And that Trump at the correspondence dinner could talk about birtherism or birther or he could run around and talk about how the elections are fucked up and it's all a fraud. All he wants as a private citizen. But as the president of the United States, he committed a federal crime. And, I will be happy when he's convicted of it. Now, go ahead.
Okay, so hypothetically, here's kind of where I was going. Okay. Let's twist it a little bit further than what happened. Let's say Trump on that day called for the entire people of the U.S. to say, hey, look, they stole this election from not only me, but from you. This government is corrupt. We need to take it over, and we're going to be a different country. We're going to go.
That is called sedition.
So that's different, right? So I guess my question was, in the parallel to Afghanistan, how many people do you think it would actually take to do that should somebody call upon them to do so?
Yeah, I don't know the exact number. I think that how many U.S. citizens with AK-47s would it take to overthrow the government, considering they would have to go against the combined might of the military of the armed forces?
Do you think you could? Let's say, I'm going to throw out a number, 5 million people. Right? Let's say it's
5 million people.
Yeah, 5 million.
Okay.
Make it bigger. I don't know. Make it
smaller. How are you going to get 5 million people To do what?
Well, I'll say, stick with my original number: 5 million people that come out of their garages with their AK-47s, and they storm not only the Capitol, the White House, but all of the state houses, and they say, "We're with Team Trump, we're America 2.0, and we're now in charge." Do you think that could ever happen? And what do you think the response would be from the rest of the world?
Well, wow, that is a dystopian vision you're having, my young friend.
I'm not wishing this to be.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, what's the question you're asking me? Do I think that could happen?
Yeah, and I guess the reason
5 million people somehow coordinated.
That's a number.
Attack.
I threw that number out, just kind of. But go back to Afghanistan.
Here's what
I was surprised.
5 million people scattered across the United States that come out of their garage and then confront the military, the U.S. military, in an attempt to overthrow the government. I think it would be a slaughter by the military. I mean,
I would agree. So could there be a number?
Huh?
What'd you say? 50?
Well, when 50 millimeter guns start ripping into these dipshits with their AK-47s, I just hope I'm there to see it, on CNN.
So are we saying it couldn't really happen? Because what I was really implying
I don't think any
here,
group of 5 million people would ever consider that they could overpower the U.S. military.
So what? I mean,
and here's the other thing.
Yeah.
There's no command and control that can handle 5 million pissed off. That might be the total amount of Trump supporters in the entire country.
Yeah, but how many of? I agree. I think we're saying the same thing. Could it really happen?
I don't think so.
I don't either. But it was surprising how
some
small.
bad shit happened. Some bad shit could happen.
Yes, but it's surprising how small the number was in Afghanistan, and it just makes me wonder. What would it take in other places around the world or in this country? Yeah.
So if 5 million Taliban fighters came into the United States to try to overthrow the government, I think out of 350 million people, 250 million of them would kick their fucking asses into.
I would agree with you. But how many would it take?
But that's because they would have the will. Okay.
Yeah.
What's going on in Afghanistan is these people do not have the will. We wanted to fool ourselves into thinking we gave them the will, but we never did. We pumped in billions of dollars every month for 20 straight years. Do you know how much graft and corruption that generates in a country like that? Before we ever stepped foot in Afghanistan, that the government there was rife with corruption. When we started pumping in money by the billions 20 years ago, the corrupt politicians lined up and just started stuffing their pockets. There are entire neighborhoods in Kabul that were not there 20 years ago that are there now that are big, gaudy, small Trump-like palaces. Right inside them, we've seen the pictures all weekend. There's Taliban.
You think that was part of the check? Hey, if you endorse this check, what we send you, you have to design it in the Trump style.
Oh my God! I think that we were kidding ourselves for 20 years, and for whatever part of that we've been kidding ourselves, that we were doing something there, that we were nation building, that we were building schools and roads, and we were uplifting the life of women in Afghan. Maybe.
But go back to that point, nation building. Is it really that our idea of democracy and freedom just doesn't work elsewhere around the world?
Nation building. So we blew up Japan, right? And we went in and helped them rebuild their nation, their infrastructure. Europe was blown to bits by the Nazis, and we went in and helped them reconstruct, right? The South was devastated by the northern forces during the Civil War. We had reconstruction. Nation building. But if you go into an all Islamic land where you're hated and you try to buy their allegiance by pumping in billions of dollars to their highly corrupt government officials, and then 20 years later you're like, wow, what happened to all the money? Where's all the progress? There are no fucking schools.
But don't you think on all those examples that you just cited of rebuilding, the reason that it was able to happen is because a common belief about how people should live in those societies. And are we saying that those common beliefs, corrupt or not,
they don't exist in the Middle East?
That's what I think.
Yeah, it's not. We don't share religion with them for the most part. We don't share culture with them for the most part. We don't share morals with them for the most part. We are several eons apart in our outlook on women's rights and things like that. So I just think it was always a fool's errand. I think it was hubris and nonsense on our part to think we could do it. If President Obama had visions that our continued presidents during his 8 years of his presidency was really going to result in uplifting that country to a modern state of civilization, then he's stupider than I thought he was, right? And I don't honestly know. I'll be interested to try to find and read what his thoughts about this were or are now, if I can find an honest account of them. If I was him, I'd be a little bit embarrassed about having let this go on through his 8 years presidency. But you only have so much political capital to spend, and I think that, frankly, the way Joe Biden looked at this was, hey, if I'm going to do this, it needs to happen right now, right? If I let it go on for 2 years, I may be in no way be in a position to.
Well, and he's motivated by other factors to do that too,
like
his heartbeat.
Yeah. So, So I mean, I think this is a very tragic situation. I feel bad for the women of that country. But we started this? We don't owe them anything.
Do
we owe Afghanistan something? What would we owe them?
I don't know. That's part of the rallying cry. So again, and this might, I don't know if this
fucked up when they let Al Qaeda form in that country and then attack us. That was going to bring down the might of the U.S. military on their heads, no matter what.
So some in the far left are literally calling for the United States to round up the civilians in Afghanistan and bring them to the United States because we owe them salvation.
I don't think there's any big push for that. I think the American people as a whole feel a great deal of indebted to the people that did cooperate us over the 20 years, right? So, and I think that you're going to have to distinguish between people that actually cooperated with us and contributed to the greater good of the American mission there, to our troops and to our administrators and so forth there, who all were there serving their country, right? I think that the best you can, you're going to have to distinguish between the people that were just there for the graft on both sides, whether that be American contractors, or Afghani crime lords, whatever the fuck you want to call them. And now all of a sudden, we were on your side the whole time. Yeah, they just want to get out, right? There's going to be refugees. So I don't think we should be bringing refugees to this country necessarily. I think we have a debt and a responsibility to try to get as many cooperators out of that country as we can. But it's not the entire population of Afghanistan. That country is not our responsibility.
Well, I agree with that too. We should tell that to some of the most vocal on the left because they're calling for a different reality.
Bring AOC over here and I'll explain it to her.
I can't even stand reading her name. You were telling me.
Am I using the right?
I think so.
You were telling OAC or something
before we came on the air that you were going to have some blood tests and check for your, what did you say? IAC levels. What is it?
My A1C.
A1C. And all I heard was AOC. Stop saying that fucking name.
My 3-month blood sugar average, not my AOC.
But I think the other part about the timing for Biden is that there's support globally. Like who had the second largest amount of troops? Was it England?
I do not know.
And they're saying, hey, we're not going back.
Yeah, I wouldn't think. And we have right now at the airport, we have Turks and we have Australians. I mean, there are different forces there. There are 5. I think they said there were 500 Afghan Defense Force troops there inside the airport helping maintain security of the airport. So I think we're going to need to take them out of there for sure.
Yeah, they each have 1 round of ammunition.
Yeah, they're going to need
use
that.
it sparingly.
Oh my God. Yeah, I feel bad. I mean, we couldn't save Syria. We can't save Afghanistan. We're not likely to save Yemen. We're not likely to save Palestine. There's a whole bunch of places there that we're just not going to be able to reform in our image. And I think that our sole objective regarding the Middle East, besides normal diplomatic relationships
and trade, yeah,
and trade and so forth with them, and should be our focus. But then we need to focus on, doing whatever we can to degrade and stop terrorist attacks on U.S. soil and our allies, for that matter. And to that extent, we killed Osama bin Laden. We destroyed Al Qaeda. There's nothing left of not that it can't reform, but Al Qaeda is gone.
Endemic, right?
Is
terrorism endemic?
It's endemic, yeah. What of ISIS? I mean, I think one of the reasons why Obama administration, and even Trump for that matter, didn't decide at the beginning of their administrations or at the second, during the second term of Obama, that they were going to finally end the conflict in Afghanistan, America's longest war, because ISIS was all over the fucking place, right? And so I don't think that I think that's a huge reason why it didn't happen. And I think all of that needs to be analyzed as we go on.
Yeah,
but
because
just forget about it. We're out now.
Well, that was part of the strategy, right? Which is kind of what you were saying. And I think there was a generally accepted philosophy for a period of time where, yes, we have to protect our borders, but we have to be on the offense and go out and solve the problem elsewhere before it comes on American soil.
Well, I mean, listen, ISIS was a scary fucking situation. More scary to me than Taliban. More scary.
They were the beheaders, right?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot going on there. That was a scary situation. They were actually claiming territory, right? And so there's this trigger in the Middle East that I think, at least, and if somebody thinks I've got this wrong, let me know, but there's this part of their religious outlook, and I'm not claiming to be any kind of Islamic scholar, but there's something called a caliphate, and ISIS was in order to establish what is known in the Muslim world as a caliphate, the great homeland of the Islamic people, from which they will take over the world. You have to actually gain and hold territory, and that's what they were doing in Iraq and parts of Afghanistan and Syria and so forth. And, that needed to be stopped. So I think the focus was there for quite some time. So it's all a little muddy now, right? I mean, we had an election. All the focus on the Middle East was off for a while. And then, then the talk about drawing down in Afghanistan comes, and that starts the shit show. And, I don't know. I mean, I think it's a cheap shot. It's an easy shot for people to criticize it. Look, here's the important thing. You look at this situation objectively. You're the president of the United States. Should we continue to be there? Or should we get out? Right? ISIS is as calmed down as it's ever going to be. Al Qaeda is, disassembled.
Al Qaeda, as Bush used to say.
Al Qaeda. And we killed Osama bin Laden.
Sounds like a Mexican restaurant.
Yeah, we killed the people that we feel were responsible for 9/11, and we established that they were in Afghanistan, which justifies us being there. But, that was 10 years ago. So why we didn't exit 10 years ago, I'm not 100% sure. That's just a complicated calculation that I'm sure President Obama had to make, and we all know what he did. So what he made. And so now, for me, Biden's looking at a situation and making a hard choice, and he's going to take shit for it. But here's what I'm going to tell you and everybody else listening. it's just going to be a blip. It's not going to bring down his presidency.
Yeah,
it's not going to do anything like that.
I don't even see it as a blip, to be honest. Yeah. And I say it again, I don't see this as a criticism of Biden or anything else. I think it was the right thing to do. But what we've learned here and what we've identified is that the root of all evil is this fucking organized religion.
Oh, man.
Any religion.
I really don't want to.
It's just crazy to me that people in this day and age are fighting to the death because of an imaginary man in the sky.
Yeah.
I can't understand it. And that's fine if you want to believe that. I guess I won't fly to your foreign land and try to kill you so you don't think that way. But
you don't have to fly to a foreign land. I mean, there's plenty of people here.
I don't get it.
Well, I think for those of us that are not particularly religious, certainly are not involved in organized religion, maybe, are agnostic or atheist. And so the difference between those two, if anybody isn't clear, is an atheist just doesn't believe there's anything out there, known or unknown, as far as spirituality goes. And if you're agnostic, you're not making any grand proclamations. You probably do not accept the traditional religious godheads and strictures of religion. And you may or may not profess to believe in God, but typically agnostics are saying, look, I don't neither believe or not believe in God. I don't know, so I'm not making. That's the difference between the two groups.
But even on the atheist side, isn't it more specifically that you just don't believe in any deity?
You don't believe in God. I mean, if you come out and say, "Hey, there's no God," that you're an atheist. You're not an agnostic, right?
Right.
So,
which I'm in that camp.
Yeah, you're in that camp. I'm more of an agnostic, and I don't feel the need to make any kind of decision on that. I'm really good with saying, "Hey, I don't really know, and I don't think anybody else knows those answers," and so. I am fully confident that myself and society can live without having to grab on to answers that they can't prove one way or the other.
Is that what keeps us calm and sane? Because if we all knew, if we found out, and I think maybe you cited this before, that a complete destruction of, I think specifically we were talking about Christianity, overnight would be bad because people couldn't handle it. So is that what makes our pathetic, pitiful lives sustainable, that we can live 80 years on average thinking that there is some imaginary guy in the sky and we're going to have life after death?
I think people want to think that there's a reason. They want there to be a reason why they're here, right? I think when people start to go down a path of like relativism, like what does it matter? Why are we here? Nothing means anything. Okay. And then I will tell you, if you're one of those religious people, organized religious, on whether you're a Muslim or a Christian or whatever, your vision of a large portion of the world's population believing that there's nothing and no reason to have morals, they're afraid that there will be no morals, that people are not capable of being moral, making moral decisions without religion.
But if the point is that you'll someday meet your maker and live in eternal life, then wouldn't you be mad at your God because you'd be like, hey, why'd you send me there for 80 years? You could have just skipped that step and sent me right up here with you. What's the point?
I think a lot of those people, so a lot of people that would profess to have, deep, meaningful religious beliefs, will deal with questions throughout their life that they may or may not be able to come to acceptable answers for, right? So when their mother dies, when their children die, when someone, when their favorite country music star dies, I don't know.
There's a lot of crying in country music anyway, isn't there?
There is. So, I mean, I think that...
Would you be in favor of overnight eliminating country music?
I don't want to offend anybody that likes country music. I don't want to sound like some kind of elitist music snob. I think everybody that knows me, and I realize, and I'm hoping there's a lot of people that listen to this that don't really know me that well. I'm more of a rock and roll, blues, and jazz kind of guy than I am country music. Although, just having this conversation with somebody yesterday, I'm a huge fan of, Creedence Clearwater Revival.
Yeah, me too.
Right. So is that country music? Is that rock music? I don't know. I'm sure that a true country fan would fucking say, hey, that's not country music. I don't care, whatever, country rock, all that stuff. So I don't hate country music, but
it's kind of boring, huh?
Yeah, I just don't.
If we had to eliminate,
here's the thing, it doesn't speak to me, right? I've grown up here my whole life, so other than watching the occasional Western or something, I really have no connection with all of that. Okay, if I'm watching,
you can't even watch Westerns anymore. You'd be a racist.
Don't know about that. What's the one I do like that is not? It's a Western, but it is. The one with, oh my God, here we go down this road where I don't know the name.
Give me some clues. I'll look it up.
It's on the Peacock right now. It's
you're all on
series.
The Peacock.
It's a series. It used to be on, I can't think of a goddamn thing. It's the guy owns a ranch. It's in Montana. It's Yellowstone.
Oh, yeah. That's good.
Yeah, so that's a Western. That's a modern Western. And, they're dealing with questions of, there's a
land ownership issues, multi-generational.
Native Americans.
They're being fucking taxed out of their situation.
Did you get any feedback on our discussion of the three types of human beings from last week's podcast?
What were the types? I don't remember.
Mongoloid.
No, I didn't. Did you?
No.
I don't think anybody will criticize that because we were just... factually, that's
I
what
think
we were
that's
saying.
true. So, so here's the thing. We really have except for a few close friends that we talk to frequently who have great opinions, and I say that because they typically like what we do. We really have no good way for the people listening to this to give us any kind of feedback. So
they can give us feedback.
How?
You can email us at info@couchfuneral.com. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram at couchfuneral.
That's true.
Give us your thoughts. Give us your feedback. And maybe we'll leave you with this. And here's the question I was going to ask you. If we could eliminate one genre of music immediately, what would it be?
What is Slipknot fall into?
Death metal? I don't know.
Death metal, yeah. You can go ahead and lose that.
Really? You think before country?
Yeah, no, leave country.
But country's boring, and death metal is at least kind of frightening. No. You have a more charged response out of it.
Anytime the guy is wearing a stitched together metal face mask helmet and he's just literally screaming into the microphone as loud as he can, I can lose that genre, right?
It's funny you bring up Slipknot because I showed my almost 6-year-old daughter a picture of Slipknot over the weekend. So she's really,
Why?
I'm going to tell you, for some reason, she found, I don't know how, the band Evanescence. You know them?
Well, that's a great band that I love.
Female singer, right?
That's not screaming death rock.
No, not at all. But she's really into that, women's lib, independence.
She likes what's that gal's name? Can you remember?
Amy Lee is her name.
Yeah, Amy Lee.
And she has a beautiful voice, but she likes the dark rock and roll look, and she wears a little bit of eye makeup. And my daughter thinks any makeup is cool, right? And she's too young to wear it. So the other day, she says to me, Dad, we're going to start a band, and the band is called Bloody Moon.
Oh, wow. Oh, my God.
And your name is Bloody Motor, and Mom's name is Bloody Cat, and I am, God, what was her name? She's got to tell me. It was something Cat. She was like Mini Cat or something. And then we had to find a name for our son. He chose like 3 names that she didn't approve.
Oh, okay.
And then he had to be something.
Is she the leader of this band?
She's the leader, and she's dictating what instruments we can play. And my son's going to play the drums, and finally he's like Bloody Dinosaur or something, and she accepted that. And then she's like, and we have to wear really cool makeup all the time. And I said, she's got this whole thing in her head, and she's like, making some lyrics and whatever.
That's awesome.
And I said, there's a band that was famous for wearing all this face makeup called Kiss. And so I showed her the picture of Kiss. She's like, boring. And so I said, well, fuck, what about Slipknot? So I showed her Slipknot.
Oh, my God.
Ooh, that's cool.
Oh, no. Jesus. Well, you're going to pay for that.
I know.
Down the road. Yeah, that's not good. You should not subject your children to Slipknot, Korn. There's a few bands I don't like.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Those are great questions. So contact us at one of our social media whatever
Me Too's?
access, yeah, and or not, whatever you guys want to do. It's been great.
All right, everybody.
Thanks.